We're just a few hours away from the exhibition extravaganza that is Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr. Now, when this fight was announced in the summertime, people were like, just shocked that you could make this matchup. Both guys are in their mid 50s, um, and they never fought in the same weight class. Although Roy Jones Jr. did move up and beat John Ruiz to gain one of the belts, one of the heavyweight title belts. He came in at about 202 pounds, and you know, John Ruiz was the perfect fighter for him to fight at heavyweight. Not too big for a heavyweight, sort of a slow, plodding, just kind of like a sloppy fighter, mauling, go forward, just wear you down kind of fighter. He didn't have the skill to match Roy Jones Jr. So Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr. was officially announced for September. It was pushed back until today, late November. We're just hours away, and it's an interesting matchup to say the least. It's not an outright fight. It's being called an exhibition. It's only 8 round fight at 2 minute rounds. So you got eight rounds at 2 minutes apiece, and there's no knockouts. There's no judges. There's no winner, and it's just a weird thing, but it's intriguing. And you had Mike Tyson, who hasn't fought since 2005. He lost to Danny McBride. Now, that fight took place on my birthday. I remember um, for my birthday present, my dad ordered that fight for me on pay per view. And to my dismay, I had to watch one of my childhood boxing heroes get his ass whooped by this no name dude who had no place in the ring with him. And it was just like, we've seen Tyson on the decline, but to see him lose to that guy was just a shame. And he hung it up. And he's become a whole different type of personality since then. He's had the Mike Tyson Mystery cartoon. He's got his own podcast now. I mean, he's become a different person. And we all love who Mike Tyson has evolved into. Now, Roy Jones Jr., since he moved up to heavyweight and fought John Ruiz and captured that title, he went back down to light heavy and fought Antonio Tarver and had a controversial fight with him. And then in the rematch, he got slept. And he was never the same fighter since. He lost to Joe Calzaghe. And I mean, he's fought up to as recently as 2 years ago. But Roy Jones Jr. in his prime was untouchable. I mean, the guy was really untouchable. He really came onto my radar and became one of my favorite fighters after he beat James Toney. I was a big James Toney fan. I liked his Philly shell, shoulder roll, phone booth style of fighting. I liked his mean mugging. I just liked James Toney's style. And when he got defeated so handily by Roy Jones Jr., I had to really just say, this guy, they're great middleweight fighters, but this guy is a guy who's got the dynamic skills, and he's just going to be a champion for a long time, and he was. So you've got two legends. I mean, these guys are Hall of Fame fighters. Mike Tyson, I mean, his career speaks for itself. He's one of the most feared heavyweights to ever walk the face of the earth. I mean, he brought boxing into the mainstream like no other. I mean, I remember the first time I actually got to watch a Mike Tyson fight live because we didn't get cable in my household till about 1990. And so anytime during the 80s when there was a big fight that was coming on, whether it was like Sugar Ray or Hagler or Chavez or Tyson or you name it, we had to wait up, on a Saturday evening till the local news would show the sports recap, which was always at the end of the news, and they would have like some 2 or 3 still shots, 2 or 3 photos of the action of the fight, and they would kind of give you a quick breakdown of who won. And that's how I got my boxing news in the 80s. And I remember the first time I got to watch Mike Tyson fight, man, the neighbors next door, I guess they ordered the fight. They see me playing outside and hey, come watch the fight. And it was Mike Tyson versus Michael Spinks. So that was a big deal for me. And the fight was over so quick, it was amazing. And, I've been able to follow boxing once I got cable. I was able to be able to watch the big fights on HBO and Showtime. And anyways, I'm going off on a tangent, but two of my favorite fighters of the 80s and 90s and of all times are fighting an old man exhibition tonight. And it's a little bit scary because even though there's not going to be a winner, and even though they're going to stop the fight at the first sign of any kind of cut, severe cut. I mean, when Tyson fights, he's going in there. I can't imagine he's going to be any different. When he was on the Joe Rogan podcast a year ago, about a year ago, he told Joe Rogan, and I'm paraphrasing, that he didn't work out any kind of exercising at all, not just boxing routine, but any type of physical working out at all, because it awakened some sort of beast in him that he had worked so hard to tame. And I guess between then and now, his wife had told him he was getting a little bit fat, so he started working out, treadmill, jump rope, and it escalated in the boxing routine, and then he started hitting the pads, and someone said, "Hey man, you look good. You look good on these pads," and he just started boxing training again, and here we are. And Roy Jones looks good too. I mean, these dudes are in the mid 50s, but they are the boxing legends that they are for a reason. They've got those skills, they've got that desire, they've got that fire. So it's hard to imagine Tyson fighting Roy Jones and not. How is he going to hold back? I know it's supposed to be an exhibition of boxing skill, but Roy Jones was never the most durable fighter as it was as far as taking shots to the chin. I mean, he was super dominant at 160 and 168. He was nearly untouchable. And then later on in his career, when he started to get touched, you see what happened. He got knocked cold clean out by Antonio Tarver, and he kind of popped him open. And he was sort of wobbly ever since then. He, uh, I know he got dropped by Joe Calzaghe when they fought, and I know he got knocked out by some unknown Russian dude a few years back when they fought. Like I said, Jones has fought up to us as recently as a couple of years ago, so I'm a little bit worried. It's like there's that curiosity of, man, these two legends of the game coming to put on an exhibition and show that, hey, they're old guys in the sport of boxing and in the sporting world, but they still got what it takes to compete on some level. I'm sure at a higher level than most people could ever compete, but you don't want to see these dudes embarrass themselves. We've got so much respect and admiration, and we don't want to see them looking bad. Like I said, the last time I saw Tyson fight, it was on my birthday. It was 15 years ago, and it made me really sad to see him losing that way. And to see Roy Jones fighting the way he's fighting now, it's not the same. I mean, this dude was Superman. He was untouchable, and Tyson was Iron Mike Tyson. And now you've got a couple of drunken uncles at the cookout about to get down, and sometimes it's funny and it's entertaining and it's like watching a train wreck. And I hope that's not what we see tonight. I hope we see two men who have been laser focused over the last 3 or 4 months, and they're going to come in and show us what two Hall of Fame former champions can do when they're highly dedicated and highly focused, and put on a true display of boxing skill. And I know they say there's not going to be a winner, but if someone gets knocked out or beat up or dropped, it doesn't matter what the people. I mean, there's no judges just call say who won or who didn't win. But if you see someone get dropped or knocked out or get their ass whooped, we're going to know who won the fight. So I think that, I mean, if Tyson hits Roy Jones, if he gets his paws on him, I don't understand. I don't see how Roy Jones could withstand. I know they're both about the same height. And now that Roy Jones is older and he's not training to be a middleweight, he weighed in at about 210 and Tyson was 220. So they're about the same size, but professionally in their prime, they were never the same size. And that's not a match you would have ever made. I mean, uh, Tyson is quick for a heavyweight, and Roy Jones was always lightning fast, and his reflexes were second to none. That's why he was so untouchable and so hard to beat. But I just hope that we see an exhibition of skill where these men do themselves justice and do the sport of boxing justice, and where we don't have to cringe at the results, and hopefully they don't embarrass themselves. I mean, these are men of honor, these are champions, and a lot of people are going to tune in to see what happens, but hopefully it's something memorable, something we can talk about with with a great deal of respect, and it doesn't become a spectacle. So we're just a few hours away, and we'll have to see what happens and see what the results are. I'm no expert. I'll just call it how I see it, and hopefully what we see is good, and something we can all talk about, and something that these two men can both have their hands raised at the end of the fight and walk away having scratched that competitive itch with no reason to turn back and revisit it again. UNO.